What's going on, everybody? This is Fantasera Football Week 1. I'm back, whether you like it or not. This video is super late. Kickoff is in like 3 hours. Usually these are posted earlier than this. I've just been procrastinating, but I'm super excited to be back. If you've never watched one of my videos before, I basically just try and give fantasy football advice. So each week I give 3 starts, 3 sits, and a sleeper at the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver positions. So I just love talking about football. I love watching football. I love everything about football. This is the most wonderful time of the year as far as I'm concerned. So I hope these videos help you out, maybe give you a little advice if you are trying to decide who you should start, who you should sit, or if you're just bored and have nothing else to watch. Here I am. So let's get into it. So normally I refer to him as Ben Worthlessberger because he's literally never done anything for me. But I do think Ben Roethlisberger is a good start this week. The Steelers are going to New York to take on the Giants. If you remember from last season, the Giants secondary was basically non-existent. They allowed 30 passing touchdowns. I don't think they're going to be significantly better this year, and Big Ben just has a lot of weapons on the Steelers, so I think he's a good start for week 1. Worse than the Giants, the Miami Dolphins allowed 39 passing touchdowns last season, and even though in the offseason they did completely overhaul pretty much their entire defense, a lot of their team, I am going to say start Cam Newton if you even drafted him. I know he was still available in one of my leagues, but we just didn't have very many teams, so that's probably why he's still there. But if Bill Belichick believes in Cam, then I believe in Cam. And it's really kind of sad, the downfall that he's had since Von Miller and the Denver Broncos just demolished him in the Super Bowl. We don't really have to talk about that. Yeah, right. Of course we do. I still have Super Bowl confetti from that game. That actually is really Super Bowl confetti. Now I have to pick it up before my cat eats it. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I kind of want to have faith in Cam. Dolphins' red zone defense is terrible, so even if they get close, I feel like they'll score. Again, this, for anyone who's watching for the first time, I'm not going to come out with starts like start Patrick Mahomes or start Lamar Jackson because duh. Those are does, and I don't put does in my Fantasera football videos. These are for people who didn't get high-end quarterbacks or really high-end running backs or receivers, and you're looking at your lineup like, who can I start? And a lot of times it's just based on the matchup. So, Cam Newton, number 2. Jimmy Garoppolo, even though he didn't do much in last year's Super Bowl, is my 3rd starter for week 1 because the 49ers are at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals also have a terrible secondary. They allowed 38 passing touchdowns last season, and with how good the 49ers defense is, I think they will just wreak havoc on Kyler Murray and the rest of the Cardinals offense and keep Jimmy G on the field for most of the game. If you drafted Daniel Jones, I think you should leave him on the bench this week. The Giants are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, as I said earlier. The Steelers finished last season ranked 3rd in pass defense. They were still above average in rush defense, but I am expecting the Giants to hand the ball off to Saquon Barkley more than they are going to have Daniel Jones throwing it. He was also the turnover king, him and Jameis Winston last season, just giving the ball to everybody except people on their team. So, week 1, Daniel Jones, sit. I am glad that Matthew Stafford is back. I do think he's going to have a good year overall. I just don't think he's going to play the game of his life in the season opener, especially coming back after injury. The Lions are playing the Bears at home, but the Bears last season finished 9th in both pass and rush defense, so I do think Stafford will struggle in his first game back. Baker Mayfield is my final sit at quarterback for week 1. The first reason being because they're at Baltimore, and the second reason being that the Browns are just dealing with too much. Philip Crybaby Rivers, can't stand him as a quarterback, but he does tend to perform well in season openers. He's with the Colts now. I'm kind of anxious to see how that plays out, and they're playing the Jaguars. Not a great defense. So if you are looking for a quarterback to start and you have Philip Rivers and you're deciding between him and somebody else who doesn't really matter, that's rude, I shouldn't say that. But I do have him as a sleeper, so I think he has the potential to do well, but I'm not confident enough to put him as a start. If Miles Sanders is healthy, he is going to be my first running back start. So the Eagles are at Washington. And if he's not healthy, then Boston Scott. So I think we learned last season that 99% of the Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers cannot catch a ball. So if I were them, I would start running. Also, the Washington football team finished second to last in rush defense last year. So really, any Eagles running back is a start for me in week 1. Again, we'll have to wait and see what the Miami Dolphins overhaul of their defense looks like and if it actually makes a difference. But I do like James White as a starter at running back for this first week. Damian Harris is on IR and Sony Michel is coming off of foot surgery. So James White will be getting most of the carries. And if Cam Newton does well, let's say they're up by a few touchdowns, they'll run the ball even more. So I do like James White as a start. Finally, I like Mark Ingram at home against Cleveland. The Browns finished with the 3rd worst rush defense in 2019, and I just think the Browns are going to get which I heard that some of them are into. That's my last Odell Beckham poop joke. Promise. There was a lot of hype about Leonard Fournette signing with the Buccaneers, and I'm just kind of up in the air on that. For week 1, I do have him as a sit, though, because I just don't think he's had enough practice with the team. And I also don't think he's going to get enough carries to make it worth a start. But I could be wrong. This is week 1. We've had no preseason. I have nothing to go off of. These are literally just my opinions for the first week. As we get further along down the season, we'll be able to see what's going on. But take it or leave it, Leonard Fournette on the bench. So I drafted Kenyon Drake, and I have to start him because I don't have a better option. But if you do, I would think about benching him. The Cardinals are at San Francisco. We already talked about the San Francisco defense, but I also think that Kyler Murray is going to have a really good year. He's just got some really good offensive weapons at receiver. Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, DeAndre Hopkins is there now. I also think in this week 1 game they're going to be trailing, so they're going to have to throw the ball more. So again, I hope I'm wrong on this one because, like I said, I have to start Kenyon Drake. But if you have a better option, you might want to consider putting that running back in your starting lineup over Drake. And Le'Veon Bell is going to be my final sit at running back for this week. Just has to do with the matchup. It's a really tough matchup going into Buffalo. Not expecting the Jets to go in and run all over the Bills. I think they'll actually be down the majority of the game. So probably the touches for Le'Veon Bell aren't even going to be there this week. Chris Thompson at home against the Indianapolis Colts is going to be my running back sleeper, especially if you're in a PPR league. He should be getting most of the carries, but then also the Colts last season allowed the most receptions to running backs. It was kind of hard for me to decide on my 3 starts at wide receiver, and some people might disagree, but it's what I'm going with. So my first one is Stefon Diggs. I'm anxious to see what he does with the Bills. John Brown had a good year for them last year, and the Jets secondary is below average, so we'll see. I'm not expecting Washington to have a great year by any means, but I do like Terry McLaurin as a week 1 start. Last year, he played well in both games against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it seems like Dwayne Haskins and him have a connection, so I think he'd be a solid start. Speaking of the Washington football team and their lack of talent, they allowed the 3rd most touchdowns to wide receivers in 2019, which is why Deshaun Jackson is my final start at wide receiver for week 1. He is part of the 1% of Philadelphia receivers that can catch. So if you're looking for a receiver to put in your starting lineup, I think Deshaun Jackson is a solid start. So I already said I have Daniel Jones as a quarterback sit for this week, so I'm also going to put Sterling Shepard there. If a quarterback's not doing well, his receivers probably aren't going to do well, and I just think it's too tough of a matchup against the Steelers. And like I said, I think they'll try and keep the ball on the ground for the most part. I also have Amari Cooper as a sit. The Cowboys are going to LA to play the Rams. Not that Amari Cooper isn't a good receiver, but he is going to be covered by Jalen Ramsey most likely. And I just think the Cowboys have too many other offensive weapons that they're not going to risk turnovers by throwing it to Amari Cooper. So if you have him in your starting lineup, you might want to consider switching him out for somebody with a better matchup. AJ Green is another receiver that I drafted, and I truly hope that he has a comeback year. I want Joe Burrow to do well in his rookie season, but for the first matchup against the Chargers, I just don't feel confident. So I did draft him in 2 of my leagues, but I'm not starting him in either for week 1. He's more of just a wait and see. We don't know how Joe Burrow is going to be. We don't know how the Bengals are going to perform, period. We haven't seen anything yet. So while I do hope that AJ Green has a good year, and that's why I drafted him, because I'm hopeful, I am going to keep him on the bench for week 1. And finally, with Deebo Samuel hurt and Emmanuel Sanders out of San Francisco, Brandon Ayuk is going to be my week 1 wide receiver sleeper. I just think he's going to get a lot of good opportunities, especially against the Cardinals secondary. Okay, so that wraps up Fantasera Football week 1. I'll be putting my 8-leg parlay up at the end of this video so you can see who I'm betting on, other than advice that I'm giving about individual players. So I will see you guys next week. Until then, enjoy the weekend, enjoy having football season back. 2020 has been a hell of a year, so I'm just so glad that football's back on. We have something to watch, something to look forward to. So until next week, please be a good person, spread positivity, spread love, spread kindness. Do something nice every day for a random stranger. There's too much negativity in the world right now. We just need to send out positive vibes, love each other, respect each other, and just be a good person. I'll see you guys next week.